The night sky above Wembley Stadium was alive, not just with lights, but with energy, a living pulse of sound, movement, and heartbeat that seemed to merge into one enormous organism of 72,000 souls chanting the same name. Michael, Michael, Michael. Every corner of the stadium glowed under floodlights. The massive steel beams overhead vibrated with bass. Flags waved like rippling color across the upper decks. And on stage, surrounded by pyrotechnics, lasers, and a wall of moving bodies, stood Michael Jackson. He was midway through human nature, and for a moment it was perfection, the kind of perfection that didn't need to be rehearsed because it lived in him. The band was tight, the groove hypnotic. Michael's voice, that unmistakable crystalline tenor, floated through the humid August air like a prayer made of velvet. Every note, every breath felt calibrated by the universe itself. Then it happened. Halfway through the second verse, Michael froze. His hand, that gloved hand known around the world, lifted slightly into the air. The crowd, confused, kept clapping along. The band continued for 2 beats, 3, until he turned and gave a sharp signal. The entire stage fell silent. The sound of 72,000 people collectively holding their breath filled the void. Michael took a step forward. The spotlight followed, washing him in pale gold. His face, half-shadowed, looked puzzled, not angry, not alarmed, curious. He tilted his head, listening. A murmur rippled through the stands. Was it a malfunction? A signal problem? Some thought he was improvising, building suspense. But those close enough to the stage could see something different in his expression, a subtle narrowing of the eyes, a faint smile at the corner of his lips. He was hearing something. "Wait," he said softly, the microphone catching his whisper. He turned slightly to his left, scanning the sea of faces. "Do you hear that?" The audience went still, straining to listen. All they heard was wind, a few screams of, "I love you, Michael," from the front rows, and then something faint, something musical. A single voice, distant but clear, rose above the hum. It wasn't a shout or a fan scream. It was a note, a perfectly pitched harmony floating through the night like a thread of silver light. Michael blinked. He recognized the interval instantly, a harmony that shouldn't exist unless rehearsed. He motioned to his sound engineer, gesturing upward, then back toward the seats. There was again a high, crystalline tone, blended with his last lyric, as if the two voices belonged together. The crowd had no idea what was happening, but Michael's musicians exchanged bewildered glances. The guitarist muttered into his mic, "Is that coming from the reverb?" The monitor tech shook his head. "No, that's live. Someone's singing." Michael turned back to the crowd, scanning section after section, eyes narrowing under the stage lights. Somewhere out there, amid 70,000 faces, was a voice that matched his pitch with impossible precision. "Someone out there," he said, smiling now, "is singing with me." The crowd screamed in delight, but he raised a hand for quiet. "No, really, I hear you." The lights shifted, sweeping across the stands in slow, cinematic arcs. Camera operators scrambled to capture every angle, unsure what they were searching for. He closed his eyes again, listening. There, another harmony, this time a fifth above, delicate, confident, effortless. He opened his eyes and laughed softly into the mic. "You hear that? That's beautiful." For a brief, surreal moment, Wembley Stadium felt small, like a single room where one voice was calling to another across space. "Come on," Michael said playfully. "Don't hide from me now. Sing that again." A hush swept over the audience. Even the security guards were frozen in place, heads tilted upward toward the stands. The voice sang again, louder this time. A line from Human Nature, every vowel carried with breathtaking precision. Michael's jaw dropped slightly. His reaction was pure wonder. He turned to the audience, eyes wide, glowing with excitement. "You all hear that, right?" Tens of thousands shouted back, "Yes!" Michael chuckled, pacing the edge of the stage, mic still in hand. "This is crazy," he murmured. "That's a perfect harmony. I gotta find you." The camera zoomed into the crowd, faces blurring in the lights. People pointed toward the upper decks. The band members, now off script, exchanged grins. Even the backup singers were smiling. They knew how rare it was for him to stop a show mid-song. Michael Jackson, the man who choreographed every breath, had just surrendered to the magic of the moment. He shaded his eyes and peered toward the sound. "Where are you?" he called. "Sing one more time for me. Don't be shy." The audience murmured like waves against a shore. Then silence. And then there it was. The same voice, clear and perfect, singing the next line in flawless harmony. Michael clutched his chest in disbelief. "Lord, that's beautiful," he whispered. The cameras caught his smile, that genuine, boyish, astonished grin that fans hadn't seen since the early days of Thriller. For a moment, the stage lights dimmed as if giving the spotlight to the invisible singer in the stands. The stadium, one of the loudest places on earth, became a cathedral. Michael turned to his band and nodded. "Hold everything," he said. "We're going to find her." The crowd erupted into wild cheers. He walked to the very edge of the platform. Mike lowered, scanning, listening, smiling wider by the second. His voice carried gently through the speakers. "Whoever you are, you just made me stop the show. That's never happened before." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "Sing for me again. Let's see if I can find you." And there, suspended in the thick summer air above London, one small human voice answered the king of pop. The harmony returned, stronger now, brimming with emotion. It soared, curved, and blended with the echo of his last line. Michael looked up toward the sound, eyes shining with recognition. "Right there," he said, pointing toward the upper tier. "I hear you now." The camera crane swung around, capturing the moment as the crowd roared in approval. No one realized it yet, but this was the beginning of something that would echo for decades. A night when a legend stopped performing to listen. The music had stopped, but the world was about to start listening. If you are enjoying this story, please subscribe to support the channel. Her name was Elena Morales, and she almost didn't come to the concert. The ticket had cost more than her week's rent. £45 for a seat, so high up it felt like she might touch the sky instead of the stage. She'd worked double shifts at the little cafe on Edgware Road for a month just to afford it, but she told herself it was worth it. Michael Jackson wasn't just her idol. He was her reason, the reason she studied music, the reason she believed sound could heal pain, the reason she still dreamed, even when life didn't seem to care. Now, sitting in section 527, row 32, with the wind tugging her hair and the crowd vibrating beneath her, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years, belonging. The music didn't just fill the stadium. It filled her. She sang along quietly, because that's what she'd always done. Quietly. Her mother used to say, "Mija, God gave you a voice that doesn't shout, it shines." But Elena had never believed it. In school, her accent was mocked. Her clothes were too simple. When she auditioned for the university choir, she froze halfway through Ave Maria. The conductor smiled politely and said, "Perhaps you're more of a listener than a performer." She believed him, until tonight. From a first beat of Human Nature, something inside her stirred. The bass thumped through the metal railing under her hands. The melody wrapped itself around her ribs like a heartbeat. The notes she'd memorized 100 times before suddenly felt new, alive, impossible to contain. And then she did something she'd never done before. She sang. Not softly, not under her breath. She sang. Her voice lifted from her chest and floated into the warm London air, merged with the echo of 72,000 fans. But somehow, impossibly, it found space to exist, not louder, not competing, just blending. It was instinct. She didn't think, didn't plan. She just followed what her soul heard. She found harmony. Every time Michael sang a line, she added a delicate, unseen thread that wove itself into his melody, the perfect third, the suspended fifth, the whisper of a chord that didn't exist in the original recording but should have. She was miles away from him. But musically, she was right there beside him. Then came the impossible moment. Michael's voice stopped. The band stopped. The world, or at least a part of it inside Wembley Stadium, stopped. Elena froze mid-note. her voice breaking off like a flame snuffed out by wind. "What's happening?" whispered her friend Sophia beside her, clutching her arm. Elena shook her head, her pulse hammering. The massive screens flickered between camera angles. Michael stood center stage, head tilted, eyes scanning the crowd. He said something. The mic caught it. "Do you hear that?" Elena felt her stomach drop. Her heart began to race. He couldn't be talking about her. Could he? The cameras moved, searching, the giant stage lights beginning to sweep across the sea of faces. The crowd murmured, unsure. Some laughed, some screamed. But Elena's chest tightened, because the more she listened, the more she realized what he had heard. Her harmony still echoed faintly through the sound system, bouncing off the upper decks. "Someone out there is singing with me," Michael said, voice warm, intrigued. Elena felt her throat close. Sophia's hand gripped hers. "Elena," she whispered, eyes wide. "That's you." "No," Elena said quickly, shaking her head. He can't. He can. He can't hear me from up here." But her friend was right. Somehow, through the perfect acoustics of the stadium, through fate, through 1,000 coincidences colliding, he had. Michael Jackson was looking for her. "Don't be shy," his voice boomed from the speakers. "Sing that again." Elena's vision blurred. The cameras were still sweeping. People all around her craned their necks, pointing at random sections, trying to guess who the mystery singer might be. Sophia nudged her, panic and excitement flooding her voice. "He means you. Sing, Elena. Just sing." "I can't." "Yes, you can." Elena's breath came shallow and fast. Her body trembled. Every insecurity she'd ever felt surged up like a wall. The laughter from that failed audition, the quiet humiliation of years of being unseen, the voice that said you're not enough. Michael's words cut through the noise again. "Come on now, I know you're out there. Sing with me." It felt like the entire world turned to listen. Elena closed her eyes. The first note she released was barely a whisper, but she didn't stop there. She took another breath, found her center, and let it flow. Her voice rose again, clear, resonant, alive. Why, tell them that it's human nature." The sound carried through the air, caught perfectly by one of the arena's crowd microphones. It rippled out of the speakers, blending with the reverb of Michael's unfinished line from moments before. The reaction was instant. The crowd roared. People near her turned in shock, realizing the sound came from their section. Fingers pointed. Camera lights flashed. Someone screamed, "It's her! It's the girl!" Elena's body flooded with adrenaline. Her voice didn't waver this time. It grew stronger. Michael shielded his eyes against the stage lights, searching. Then he stopped, smiled, and pointed up, right toward her. "There you are!" Sophia screamed. Elena covered her mouth, trembling. "Ladies and gentlemen," Michael said, laughing into the mic, "do you hear that? That's one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard." The crowd erupted again, louder than before. It was like the stadium itself was cheering for her. Elena shook her head, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to disappear and shine all at once. "Come on, say it again for me," Michael urged, playful and tender. "Don't be scared." Her heart nearly burst. Her voice came out before her thoughts could catch up. She sang, harmonizing perfectly with him again, this time on purpose. The sound was magic. The band members on stage exchanged stunned glances. Michael closed his eyes and nodded to the rhythm, smiling wider than anyone had seen him smile in years. And in that smile, Elena saw something she had never seen in her entire life. Recognition. He heard her, not the way the world heard her, through stereotypes, through limits, through dismissive words. He heard her, the musician, the dreamer, the girl with a quiet voice that shone instead of shouted. When she finished the line, the stadium went wild. Michael turned toward the cameras. "Security," he said, laughing breathlessly. "Bring her here. I want her on stage." The crowd exploded. Elena covered her face with her hands as tears poured freely. No, I can't." But Sophia was already pulling her up. "Yes, you can. Go." The next moments blurred, the aisle lights flashing. the security guard gesturing for her to follow, the crowd parting like a river of light, strangers clapping her on the back, shouting her name even though they didn't know it. She was shaking, terrified, exhilarated, walking down toward a dream she didn't even know she had. Far below, on that glowing stage, Michael Jackson stood waiting, hand extended toward the crowd, smile wide, voice echoing through Wembley. Let's meet the angel who stopped the show. And somewhere between fear and faith, Elena took her first step toward history. The roar that shook Wembley Stadium didn't sound like applause. It sounded like the earth itself had come alive. 72,000 voices rose at once, chanting, clapping, stomping, screaming as a single spotlight began to climb the upper decks, hunting for the source of the miracle Michael Jackson had just named. "Bring her down," Michael said again, laughing to the microphone, his breath coming fast. "Let's bring her down here." The words echoed through every speaker, every heart. And up in section 527, Elena Morales felt the world tilt beneath her. "Go, Elena! Go!" her friend Sophia shouted, shaking her shoulders. I can't," Elena stammered, eyes wide. "I can't walk in front of all these people." "Yes, you can. He asked for you. Michael Jackson just asked for you." Her pulse was so loud in her ears it drowned out the crowd. She clutched the railing like it was the only solid thing left in the universe. Then she saw them, 2 event staff in yellow jackets, climbing the stairs toward her row, waving her forward. One had a headset. The other shouted over the crowd, "You're the girl? Michael wants you down front." It didn't feel real. The entire section turned to stare. Phones, camcorders, flashes, captured her trembling hands, her tear-wet face, her disbelief. Strangers patted her arm, shouting, "Go on, love. Go make history." Sophia squeezed her hand and whispered, "Sing with your heart, like you always do." Elena nodded through the blur of tears. Her knees felt weak as she rose, the sound of 70,000 people washing over her like a tidal wave. The security guard led her down step after step. Each row she descended, more people turned to watch, cheer, film. It was as if the entire stadium had become a living organism, guiding her, a single heartbeat pushing her toward the stage. Michael, still standing under the lights, shaded his eyes and tried to track her movement. "I see you," he called, voice warm and excited. "Come on, sweetheart, take your time." The cameras followed her now. The Jumbotron screens filled with her image, a young woman in a red jacket, eyes shining, hand over her mouth in disbelief. The audience gasped when they saw her face, her genuine awe. She wasn't a celebrity, not a plant. She looked like them. Someone shouted, "She's beautiful." Another voice answered, "She's terrified." And maybe she was both. By the time she reached the lower level, she could see him clearly. Michael Jackson standing just meters away, dressed in a white sequin jacket that caught the stage lights and threw them into the night like stars. He was smaller than she imagined, almost fragile, but radiating warmth so intense it seemed to glow. When their eyes met, the noise of the crowd fell away. For one impossible second, it was just the 2 of them. "Hi," Michael said softly into the mic, smiling. Elena laughed through tears, shaking her head. "Hi." The crowd erupted again. Michael turned to them and raised his hand. "Everyone, say hi to Elena." Tens of thousands of voices thundered her name back at her. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. "Oh my God." Michael chuckled, stepping closer. "You sing beautifully," he said, voice low enough that only the stage might caught it. "You stopped the music." Elena's throat tightened. "I didn't mean to." "That's how you know it's real," he said. "When it just happens." He reached out his hand. "Come on, let's finish what we started." The moment her fingers touched his, electricity coursed through her body. Not from nerves, not from the spotlight, but from connection. The stadium lights shifted, dimming the outer rings, focusing everything on the stage where the king of pop and an unknown girl stood hand in hand. Michael guided her towards center stage. The giant LED screen showed her face again, stunned, glowing alive. The audience went wild. "Let's make some music together," he said. "You ready?" Elena's voice shook. I think so. He laughed gently. Don't think. Just feel. Music is about feeling. She nodded, swallowing hard, glancing back at the sea of faces stretching to infinity. The sight was dizzying. Lights like galaxies, fans waving signs, people crying. Michael leaned toward her, whispering, "Don't worry about them. Just look at me." The crowd cheered as he turned back to the microphone, signaling the band. "All right, everybody," he called out. "Let's take it from the top." The familiar opening chords of Human Nature began again, softer this time, the synth like the sound of breathing. The drummer kept it steady, the guitarist lowering his tone so that Michael's voice and hers could float above everything. He gestured to her. "When you feel it, just come in." She nodded, tears still glistening. The first line came from him, looking out across the nighttime. Then he turned slightly toward her, eyes bright, encouraging. Her lips parted. Her harmony slipped in naturally, pure, fragile, beautiful. The sound carried through the stadium and into millions of hearts watching from afar. Michael's smile widened. He sang the next line, stronger now, his phrasing adjusting instinctively to fit her tone. She followed him like they'd rehearsed for years. On the giant screen, their voices looked like one heartbeat, rising and falling together. Halfway through the verse, Michael stepped back and motioned for her to take a line. The crowd gasped. This was unplanned, unscripted. Elena froze. He leaned close, whispering just loud enough for her to hear. "You can do this. Sing it to me." And she did. If they say, why? The words quivered at first, then soared. "Tell them that it's human nature." The crowd screamed. Michael laughed out loud, clapping once, then joined her on harmony. Their voices intertwined, hers soft and golden, his sharp and silver, two threads weaving one sound that seemed to rise beyond the stage and into the heavens. When they reached the chorus, the audience sang along, tens of thousands of voices harmonizing instinctively, filling the night with sound. Michael raised his mic toward the stands, letting them join in. Elena turned to face the crowd, tears falling freely now, no longer afraid. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was part of something eternal. The song ended with a long, suspended note, her voice blending perfectly into his. When silence finally fell, there was no immediate applause, just a stunned pause, as if everyone needed to catch their breath after witnessing something too pure for words. Then, like a spark igniting a forest, the applause erupted, thunderous, endless. Michael took her hand and lifted it high. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice trembling with genuine emotion. That was Elena Morales, the voice that stopped the show. The audience roared her name. Elena covered her mouth, laughing and crying all at once. Michael bowed toward her, still holding her hand. "You reminded me," he said softly, "why I sing." She looked up at him through her tears. "You reminded me why I should." And with that, the stage lights flared, the music swelled, and the two of them, the superstar and the girl from the upper deck, embraced as the night sky over Wembley erupted in gold. For everyone watching, it wasn't just a concert anymore. It was proof that sometimes, when music listens back, miracles happen. For a long, shimmering moment, neither of them moved. Michael stood center stage, his gloved hand still wrapped around Elena's trembling fingers, both faces illuminated by a halo of light. The roar of the audience began to fade into something softer. Not silence, but reverence. Even in a stadium built for chaos, there was awe. "All right," Michael said finally, voice gentle but charged with excitement. "Let's show them what music can do." The band eased back into position, exchanging looks that blended disbelief and anticipation. Jonathan Sugarfoot Moffett, Michael's drummer since the Victory Tour, spun his sticks and mouthed, "You ready for this, boss?" Michael nodded once. The keyboardist began playing the opening chords of Man in the Mirror. The audience gasped. They knew the moment, the anthem, the song that always brought the show to its emotional peak. But tonight, it felt different. Tonight, it wasn't about choreography or production or precision. It was about a connection that had somehow crossed a sea of strangers and found harmony in the middle of a dream. Michael turned to Elena. "You know this one?" She laughed softly through her tears. Everyone does. He grinned. Then sing it like it's yours. The first line came slow, raw, intimate. I'm going to make a change for once in my life. Michael's voice was quieter than usual, more human than polished. Every syllable carried the warmth of sincerity. Then Elena joined, not loud, not competing, just a delicate shadow beneath his melody. Her voice wrapped around us like light around smoke. The crowd went still again. There was something about the way they sang, not rehearsed, not showy, but true. Their voices weren't trying to outshine each other. They were building something new, something fragile and luminous. Michael glanced sideways at her, smiling mid-lyric. See? I told you belong here. Tears slid down her cheeks. I still can't believe this is happening. Believe it, he whispered, hand tightening on hers. Because it is. They moved together across the stage, his choreographer instincts kicking in. Even without steps or cues, their bodies found rhythm. The sway of trust, the pulse of shared emotion. The massive screens above them magnified every expression, every glance, every small miracle in real time. Then came the bridge. The choir of backup singers, a dozen professionals flown in from Los Angeles, began to rise in harmony behind them. But Michael raised a hand, signaling them to lower their mics. He wanted her to take it. Elena blinked in disbelief. Me? Michael smiled. You. He turned to crowd. You all ready to hear something special? The roar that followed could have cracked the sky. The band softened again. All that remained was a single piano note and the hum of the crowd. Michael gave her a tiny nod, his unspoken go-ahead. She took a breath, then another, and then she sang. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. Her tone was different now, no longer tentative or shy. It was open, soaring, drenched in emotion. Her voice had texture, depth, a kind of ache that made strangers cry without knowing why. By the second line, Michael joined in under her melody, adding harmony this time. His harmony, letting her lead. The reversal wasn't lost on anyone. The king of pop, the perfectionist who planned every second of his shows, was letting a total stranger take center stage. It was a duet of grace. As the chorus built, the crowd began to sing too. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make a change. Thousands of phones, cameras, and lighters illuminated the stands, transforming Wembley into a galaxy of human stars. From above, it must have looked like the Milky Way had fallen to earth. Elena lifted her arms, tears streaking her face, voice cracking but beautiful in its imperfection. Michael's face glistened under the lights, sweat, tears, and something beyond words. He looked at her like he was looking at the miracle of sound itself. Then, with a burst of adrenaline, he spun toward the band and shouted, "One more time!" The instruments surged back to life. The full band, the choir, and 70,000 voices joined in. But somehow, Elena's voice still cut through it all, not overpowering but resonant, like a single flame burning at the center of a storm. When the song ended, the entire stadium fell into stunned silence again. Michael stood motionless, breathing hard, staring out the crowd as if trying to memorize a moment. Elena wiped her face, overwhelmed, half smiling, half crying. Then Michael did something no one expected. He turned to her and bowed. Not a small nod, a deep, respectful bow, one artist to another. The crowd lost their minds. The sound was deafening, a physical force that shook the stage itself. Michael laughed, lifted her hand again, and shouted over the noise. This young lady just reminded me what music is all about. He pointed to her, then to the audience. You all felt that, didn't you? The response was a thunderous yes. Elena covered her face with both hands, overwhelmed. Michael stepped closer, his voice low enough for her alone. You just changed the energy of this place. You made it real again. She looked at him, shaking her head. You changed my life. He smiled softly. Then we're even. Backstage, crew members stood frozen near the curtains, some with tears in their eyes. The sound engineers in the booth had stopped adjusting levels altogether. They just listened. One of them whispered into his mic, "We're recording this, right? Please tell me we're recording this." They were. And that recording would go on to become one of the most treasured bootlegs in concert history. Copied, shared, traded, whispered about for decades. But that night, none of them knew it yet. All they knew was that something divine had passed between two people on a stage. Something you can't choreograph, can't rehearse, can't buy. Michael turned toward the audience again. Let's give her one more round of love. The stadium erupted, the chant starting slowly, then spreading like wildfire. Yeliene! 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 Elena looked out over the sea of people chanting her name, and for the first time in her life, she didn't shrink from it. She stood tall, lifted her head, and smiled through tears. Michael leaned over, whispering to the roar, "Now you'll never forget how that feels." She laughed softly. "Never." He nodded toward the exit ramp. "Come on, let's go meet the world." As they walked off stage together, the music swelled one final time, the outro of Man in the Mirror echoing like a heartbeat through the night. Elena glanced back one last time, seeing 72,000 people still on their feet, still cheering, still chanting. The lights glowed like dawn. She turned to Michael, voice trembling. "What just happened out there?" He smiled, that same quiet, knowing smile he'd worn since he heard her voice for the first time. "Something that doesn't happen twice," he said. "You can't plan magic. You can only let it happen." And together, they disappeared into the dark wings of the stage, leaving behind a crowd that knew, deep down, they had just witnessed something legendary. No one left their seats that night. When the lights finally came back up over Wembley Stadium, tens of thousands of people just stood there, crying, clapping, hugging strangers. The air itself felt changed, like something sacred had passed through it. Even the technicians, hardened by years of tour life, stood behind the barricades, wiping their eyes. It wasn't a concert anymore. It was a moment in history. Elena sat backstage, still shaking. A silk towel rested over her shoulders, a bottle of water untouched in her hands. Her entire body trembled from the adrenaline, her pulse still echoing with the rhythm of Man in the Mirror. Down the hallway, she could hear him, Michael, thanking the band, laughing softly, that high, boyish giggle that made everyone smile. But when he stepped into the small dressing room where she sat, everything went quiet again. He smiled, towel around his neck, curls damp with sweat. "There she is," he said. Elena stood instantly, still stunned that he was real. "Mr. Jackson." He waved a hand, grinning. "Michael, please." "Michael," she repeated, voice trembling. "I don't know what to say." He chuckled. "You already said it. Out there." He gestured toward the stage. "That was beautiful." She shook her head, tears in her eyes. "I didn't mean to." "That's what made it perfect." He moved closer, lowering his voice. "You didn't come to perform. You came to feel. That's what real music is." For a moment, the weight of it all hit her. The crowd, the lights, the sound of 70,000 people chanting her name. She laughed through her tears. "I still can't believe you heard me." Michael smiled softly. "I didn't just hear you. I felt you." He pointed to his chest. "Here." The words hit her deeper than any compliment could. He continued, "You have a gift, Elena. You reminded me why I started doing this. Not for fame, not for charts, for connection. You made me stop the show because you reminded me what it's supposed to feel like." She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "Thank you." He shook his head. "Don't thank me. Just promise me one thing." "What?" He looked her dead in the eye. Sincere, steady. "Promise me you'll never hide that voice again." In the weeks that followed, the legend spread like wildfire. There was no internet, no social media, just whispers, word of mouth, bootleg VHS tapes, and radio DJs who couldn't stop talking about the night the music stopped. Someone in the audience had captured the entire performance on camcorder. Within days, copies began circulating through London's underground music community. By the end of the month, fan clubs from Tokyo to Toronto had obtained grainy duplicates. The footage was shaky, the audio imperfect, but the magic was undeniable. You could hear Michael's voice stop mid-song. You could hear him say, "Someone out there is singing with me." And then that harmony, that angelic voice rising from the stands, perfectly in tune. Radio hosts played clips on air, debating who she was. Journalists wrote about the mystery girl. MTV even aired a short segment, When Michael Jackson Found Music in Crowd. For days, her phone didn't stop ringing. Her small London apartment filled with flowers, fan mail, and interview requests. But Elena didn't feel like a star. She still felt like the girl from Section 527 who came to listen and ended up changing her life. Then came the call. It was Michael's manager. Michael would like to invite you to Los Angeles. He's working on something, and he wants you to be part of it. 2 months later, she was standing inside Westlake Studios, the same room where Thriller was born. Michael arrived quietly, dressed in a simple black shirt and fedora, his energy calm but focused. He didn't waste time. "Let's record," he said with a grin. They spent hours together, recording harmonies, reimagining parts of Man in the Mirror. Every take was effortless, the same chemistry from Wembley, but refined, captured, preserved. Michael encouraged her between takes. "Trust your ear. Don't think about me. Think about the music. Let your heart lead your phrasing. You have beautiful instincts." By the time they finished, it was 2:17 a.m. The final track played back to the massive studio speakers, and neither of them spoke. It was haunting, pure. You could hear her voice rising in his following, not as teacher and student, but as equals. He turned to her, eyes shining. "Do you hear that?" Elena nodded. "It sounds alive." He smiled softly. "That's because it is." Months passed, then years. Elena began to record her own music, performing under her full name, Elena Morales. She never chased fame. She didn't have to. Her first album, Human Harmony, went platinum in 6 countries, produced in part by Michael himself. But even as her career grew, she never forgot that night. Neither did the world. Fans who would have spoke of it as if describing a religious experience. "He stopped the show," one said, "because the music found him back." Bootleg copies became collectors' items. Journalists still wrote about the night at Wembley. A decade later, Rolling Stone named it one of the most magical moments in live performance history. And when Michael passed in 2009, Elena was one of the invited performers at his memorial. She sang Man in the Mirror again, alone this time, while footage from Wembley played on the giant screen behind her. As she sang the line, "If you want to make the world a better place," the crowd in the Staples Center began to sing with her, just as they had that night. Thousands of voices harmonizing. She looked up at the screen, at his face frozen mid-smile, and whispered under her breath, "You kept your promise. You made the world listen." Today, if you walk through Wembley Stadium, near Gate C, you'll find a bronze plaque mounted on the inner wall. It reads, August 30th, 1988, in memory of the night when music listened back. Michael Jackson and Elena Morales, the duet that stopped the world. Every major artist who performs there stops to read it. Some even include a moment of silence before their show, a tribute to what happened when the king of pop handed a stage to someone unknown, proving that greatness can come from anywhere. And every year on the anniversary, Elena returns quietly. She sits high in the stands where she once sang, closes her eyes, and hums a harmony that started it all. Because sometimes, history isn't written in grand gestures or perfect choreography. Sometimes it's written in a single voice, trembling but brave, rising from the crowd, and the one person who was wise enough to stop everything and listen. If you like this story, please subscribe to support this channel.